If you know me personally, then chances are that besides RWBY, you'd know that I have a special attachment to the horror genre. As a kid, I was honestly scared of confronting something I couldn't exactly fight back from so easily. In addition to the sudden rush one can feel, with the unexpected bursting through an area you're trying to survive. From the classics I still enjoy to this day from time to time, to things I really should play again sometime since it's been years and I never completed the series, and to things that would come in the future. The horror genre comes in many different packages and has many different flavors. Fighting back against creatures beyond perversion is one thing, but how about defending yourself against an antagonistic force that's not only terrifying in design, but you almost have no means in defending yourself? You're forced to flee with limited resources to aid your escape, and as a result of fleeing from said antagonistic force, the ugliness that manifests from these encounters don't come from the terrifying creatures themselves, but rather the person defending themselves as their emotions spiral out of control. Fear, grief, and death makes them forget who they are. If not for the people who cared for their well-being, they would have been consumed by that fear and could have died a reckless coward who wanted nothing more than to just face their fears through spite and vengeance, as opposed to love, remembrance, and an effectively coordinated offense and defense. However, sometimes the strategy isn't exactly useful in dire situations, and it requires a light that shines through power that's hers. Though the spirit is indomitable, the secrets that some would rather see locked away in the bowels of places unseen and untouched can re-emerge to weaken and break you. And when that happens, well, let's just say in other cases some are no longer worthy to embrace the light that they once held as they've been strung up by a foreboding influence. And once those strings begin puppeteering their actions, chances are high that there's no going back. So as I quickly breeze through these for time, let's move quickly through various examples that stood out to me while watching this show, starting with the fear that lies within Ren and Nora. Kuroyuri, a blossoming town embodying a steady population of merchants, tradesmen, and thriving families. Well, take all of that and tear it down as an unbeatable threat slowly marches through the town through smoke and fire, while the seemingly helpless inhabitants are forced to make a stand against this monstrosity, barely standing a chance as its shadows grow ever larger as they prepare to enter death's door. But of course, an epic orchestra following a sad, helpless Lai Ren isn't the horror we're looking for, but the aftermath that said orchestra leaves behind is, as Kuroyuri withers away, forgotten with time, violins channels the very atmosphere that accompanies this gray, desolate journey. In that present, the creature we knew as the Nuclevi still lurked in the area, its vicious roars echoing in the distance, salivating for the hunt as its joints cracked and its body twisted, and turning as it prepared for battle, just as it had many times before. Through many foes it's defeated, and Dad would be proud. So with the hoof prints finally identified, and the air cleared, let's take things to the air and continue onward as we're met face to face once again with the Seer Grimm. Now, I wouldn't say these represent a horror per se, but it still steers into that direction as it merely flirts with the genre, momentarily, with a character I personally still feel nothing over in their hour of their passing. But, despite that disconnect, I still appreciate the attempt of an introduction to Salem's communication methods, which may well be an evolution to her previous surveillance abilities that she once used to keep an eye on humanity back in the day. Kinda funny that the precursor is shown a few volumes before its successor, eh? Anyway, with that being said, sure, it may not seem like much on first glance, but as its clicks remind me of Naughty Dog's clicker in The Last of Us, through multiple angles it's shown to be feared and well known as an enforcer that Salem is able to use for her own persuasive reminders that she's in charge. Sure, not every situation is going to have something that's gonna get me scared, but what does intrigue me the most is this. There's devastation that's left behind, and then there's the devastation unfolding in the moment. We're allowed to picture the gruesomeness of a character dying off camera as you hear their flesh being torn through and their screams pleading for mercy. Which is something I've come across before, but nevertheless, it works as the mind tries to cover the grounds to pave the way for the rest of our senses in the scenario that one is turned off or obscured. In this case, it's sight. I don't think we've seen one go down in a fight yet, but I hope it returns sometime in the future to continue providing Overwatch for Salem and her faction. Whether or not it's effective on the battlefield remains to be seen, but now it's time to walk away from said battlefield and take a jump down the rabbit hole. The Brunswick Arc, without a doubt, is one of RWBY's best prime examples of how the horror genre should be handled within their show, The other two I've covered merely poke their head out to take a look at what kind of horrifying experiences they can create with what elements and circumstances were introduced, but with Volume 6, RWBY was able to finally wrap itself in its embrace and took the plunge into what a fan like myself would remember as one of my favorite arcs of RWBY. Within this tight space at the butt end of Anima's freezing forests lies a darkened home with a family seemingly undone by a prolonged period of sleep. Or so it seemed. Horrors look up from down below, with full intent to feast upon those who still possesses ounces of light in the darkest of times, lusting and yearning for its eradication so that those swayed by the temptation of apathy can no longer return to the dawn of light that gives them the courage and hope to keep moving forward. To live without hope is to cease to live, and to cease to live is to cease all care for things surrounding them as the darkness becomes a place of comfort for one's own permanent rest. When it comes to sound design, music, and sights slowly revealing itself as the tension rises in the room, the question that a viewer like myself is left with is, what really killed them? What's really here? So now we see a mixture of devastation left behind, though admittedly quiet and intimidating since most of the residence is intact, and devastation is about to unfold soon. But before we discover what quietly tore apart this presumably once thriving family, we keep our questions so we stay on alert for what answers may come from our suspicions. Those suspicions are touched upon through a sight that characters themselves didn't notice, but we the audience knew as the camera focused on a daunting cellar gate, closing off episode 5 so the credits can play. There's an unseen horror lurking within this farm after all. Past media I've seen, such as Nazi zombies, have a player who can easily build powerful weapons to defend themselves against the horrors lurking in the fog. Combined with the right loadout, however, they're easy to take out, and that deflates any tension. I've brought up Outlast as an example previously. It maintains tension through lack of resources to defend yourself with, so all you can really do is run and hide with nothing but a night vision camera to navigate the darkness. While RWBY Volume 6 doesn't necessarily have a journalist running for his life, as he captures every moment through a lens, the lens that's already installed at birth develops into a rare ability that our brave leader possesses. Besides that sigh of relief from the after effects of RWBY's eyes, the arc still possesses a nice and interesting middle ground of switching between these two techniques. Team RWBY couldn't fight back like before since it was pretty much already drilled into their heads that they needed to take the leap and just fight their way out. But hey, a little knowledge can go a long ways, so there's no shame if that knowledge prompts them to run instead of fight. So with that out of the way, that concludes the discussion for the time being. I figured since I love this genre and try my best to study it even if I'm nowhere near an expert yet, it was fun to talk about and I had a great time. I hope you did too. I admittedly mustered a lot of passion upon writing and discussing the Brunswick Arc, while the others I gave my best attempt, but as always, if you have anything to add to the conversation, or you think I didn't go as in depth as you hope, let me know down in the comments. Before I go, I have a quick announcement. I'll be away for a week going camping with the family, so videos won't be on for the time I'm away, which also gives me a good moment to take a break and hopefully, like RTX, come back refreshed so I can work on more projects I want to do before the summer's end. But for the time being, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon and have your name featured here, the link is down in the description below. And if you'd like to subscribe for more of my future content, feel free to do so while also clicking that notification bell. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day and hopefully I'll see you soon. Take care.